Hello, there we go. It is.
I was going to say where Sean usually steps in.
I know. I can never see on my end. I think there's a lag. Anyway, we are live, and it is us. It is the UFC 294 breakdown, Fight IQ show, whatever you would like to call this. My name is Chris. I will be your host this evening. With me, not as always, but as ever, is Joe Sun Tzu. We all know him. And friend of the show, Drake Burden, also fellow RotoWire contributor. And I guess, Drake, I'll start with you first. How you doing, my friend? And how you feeling about this card?
I'm doing good, man, and I am super pumped for this card. It's probably the best card that we've seen in the last few months, up and down. I am really looking forward to this, particularly that main event.
Yeah, that particularly the main event, and for me, particularly the co-main event, like both of the top of this card very much, which is not something that we can always say about the main cards in these pay-per-views, as Drake and I were discussing, but we'll get to that as well. Joe, I understand. I may as well bring it up because I know you're going to tell us that you had a great week last week. I understand that, and I gather you're going for 2 in a row. Tell us about what went down last week and how you're feeling about this card as well.
Yeah, so I was asked by, the guys at DFS Army if I could fill in because Monk Matician, who is, has a great way of, interesting way of looking at fights. Like he's the data guy. He was doing something, I think, moving, and they asked me if I could kind of pitch in. So I said, okay, let's do it on Friday. And I jumped in and I think I went 10-1. Or 10-1 or 11-0. I'd have to rewatch it back on my picks, but also how you give kill shots. And I said my favorite kill shot parlay was Barbosa and Darren Elkins, both at big plus money, which hit. I said my favorite underdog play was Darren Elkins, who hit. Unfortunately, as it relates to DraftKings, it was probably the lightest I had played all year because I got burned and buried the week before with the Philip Linz Kutlaba debacle and Grant Dawson getting nuked. So I played really light. Now, to balance that off, again, dropping names of other shows here, our good friends at Dogger Pass, Cody Safdie, they do at the end of their show what they call PRP, which is a parlay using fighters from all 11 fights. And they usually hit it once or twice a year. And I don't always play it, to be honest, but I had a $25 free bet on DraftKings Sportsbook. And I'm like, let me play the PRP. 10 fights in, they're 10-0 on the PRP. So it comes down to the main event. The PRP has Barbosa on it. So my $25 free wager is now, I'm playing for north of $8,000. So with Barbosa, so I'm like, shit, what do I do? I decide to hedge. So I hedge out by putting 3,500 on Sadiq Youssef to win 2,000. And I'm figuring, you know what? I'll win 2,000, or I'll win around 5,000. So I kind of like the hedge. And boy, did that hedge look good in the first 60 seconds of that fight. And then it kind of went out. So I do have a couple of dogs that I like on this card. I'm not going to bury the lead, but I have a couple of dogs that I like. And one in particular where I think the line should be flipped. I'm not really sure how the line got set or who set it, but I think the line should be flipped and someone I'm going to be really going hard on. And the last point I want to make is, because we did not discuss this before we went live, where is Drake geographically? Are you a Midwestern guy, Drake?
Yeah, I'm in Wisconsin.
Okay. So you are like true blue RotoWire.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm 15 minutes from the office.
Okay. So you're in the land of Kringle and cheese. Yeah, got it. I love Kringles, by the way. Those little pastry thingies like Danishes. Like I sometimes O&S Bakery, I order them. Okay, that's enough.
All right. Absolutely. Well, maybe Joe will tell us more about his favorite snack foods later. For now, I want to tell everyone that if you want to get RotoWire free for 10 days, you can go to www.rotowire.com/free. No credit card required. 10 days of a lot of content. I also wanted to mention very quickly that our new MMA optimizer has been rolled out for this card. New customizations. Joe, you might like this because I know that you've always mentioned in the past you like keeping a tight core of certain players that you like and then building around those. Well, we have conditional grouping here. You can say, let's say I want Islam Makhachev in the lineup, and when Makhachev's in the lineup, I always want these guys in there with him. and you can build around that way. So a lot of customizations, a lot of things to look at. Definitely check that out. For now, and now that we are done with all of that, we can finally get to the card. And the first fight on this card is Bruno Silva. Well, I will go with the favorite first. Why not? It is Sara Magomedov. Sara Magomedov. I'm doing really well to start at 8,600, taking on Bruno Silva at 7,600. Line on this fight. Magomedov minus 325. Bruno Silva comeback plus 240. This is an interesting one for me because at first blush, it's like, two aggressive fighters, kind of a whirlwind. Somebody's probably going to drop, so you're going to probably want to have it in your lineups. But then when I thought about it a little bit more, I looked at a little bit more tape. Yes, they're both aggressive. Yes, they're both going to sort of bull in China shop. But as much as you think of Bruno Silva as that wild, aggressive guy, I also think of him as the guy who's more likely to throw straight shots here. I think of Magomedov, I will get it right one of these days, as more of a spin kicky kind of energy zapping kind of guy who, if he's not going to get a quick finish, might go ahead and waste his energy here. We know how tough Bruno Silva is. Not that he can't be knocked out. The fight against Platan, we saw how much damage he can take. And, first time at this level of competition. And I just don't feel great about it.
Hey, so Chris, tell us about MAGA's wins under modified rules. Why don't you tell our listening audience what that's all about?
I don't know. You go ahead, Joe. You seem to.
So this. He only has one eye.
Oh yeah, that's right. Sure, of course.
Yeah. So they actually in the past put some modified rules, and I don't know exactly how they were modified, but he put some modified rules together. They, the organization that he was fighting for, so some of those wins are questionable.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that doesn't surprise me. I did know about the one eye thing. I didn't quite know about all the modified rules, but that is very interesting, and another reason maybe to go for Silva, even sweeten the pot there. But I will go to our guest of honor first, which is not Joe. And Drake, how you feel about this one? Are you leading off with the dog as I am, or are you going with the kind of hot new prospect on his way in?
I'll preface it by saying that Silva has 20 knockouts to his name and is always live. That said, Magomedov is already an experienced kickboxer. He was 18-2 in his kickboxing career, moved to MMA where he is now 11-0. 10 of those are knockouts. He fights hard, he fights fast, and I'm not sure that Silva is going to be able to keep up with him.
Yeah, no, that's definitely everybody's live here. I want to I like going to the first fight anyway, just out of a superstition kind of. I don't like if it finishes and then I have to just sit there with the rest of the night knowing that I can't be on the optimal. But this time you should actually have them because they are probably going to be on the optimal. All right, Joe, you talked about him a little bit. Does that mean you're going Silva here, or are you still going?
No, I'm going with Drake here. I like MAGA. I mean, here's the thing, right? So they're probably doing MAGA a favor by not putting him in there with a wrestler and actually letting him fight a striker. MAGA, what I've watched is he's pretty light on his feet. He tends to hop, move a lot, hop a lot. I think he's got better movement than Silva. So it wouldn't surprise me if he caught Silva with something trying to come in, or just cut him off as he circles to Will. Thank you, Will. So I like MAGA here. Yeah, I'll have a few shares of Silva. I haven't looked at ownerships yet, but I'll probably be right on target. I am gonna, I'm not gonna bury the lead. I did max this card because I am not playing any cash games at all. This is a pure GPP card for me. So I maxed the $3 and I maxed the $25, and I'm doing 150 lineups. So I'm gonna have my ownership spread out. What I tend to do with the lineup optimizer, and that was great, Chris. I was not aware of the enhancements made to the RotoWire optimizer. I'm gonna have to kick the tires on it. I like to go in and set my own percentages for ownership, and that's what I use as a basis for when I run the lineup optimizer. Is I'll look at what the projected ownerships are, and then I'll go up or down from there based on how I personally feel about the fight. So I'll probably be on target with ownership for Silva, and I might be a little higher on Maga. We'll have to see.
All right. Next fight up, it is Victoria Dudakova at 9,200 on DraftKings, taking on Jin Fry at 7,000. The line on this fight is very wide. Dudakova minus 500, Jin Fry plus 360. And I mean, I don't know. I'm picking her to win, but this line seems to at least partially be predicated on the fact that her last fight ended so quickly. But it's almost like it's an algorithm that didn't know it ended due to an injury. Like, yeah, she can brawl in the pocket. She's got some nice boxing. She's got nice takedowns. I mean, that was the closest thing to a low single that we've seen in a while. The shot that she actually hit that caused the injury to end the fight to Nunes there. Jin Fry is very you're very like a journey fighter, like an okay boxer, physically strong, good takedown defense, 87% takedown defense, I believe, coming into this fight. Not very agile, can wrestle a little bit offensively by herself. I think Dudakova's volume in the pocket, and as well as her smothering takedowns, even if she doesn't land them against the fence, will be enough to get a victory here. I don't love the salary, especially with all the other high salary players we have here. We had a couple 11 fight cards. This is 13, so this is, we don't need to be, dumpster diving too much, or I should say, we don't need to be like playing every favorite because of the scantness of the card. We can sort of tend to lay back here. At least I think we can. So I'm probably going to be, I was going to say dog or pass, but I don't know what Jin Fry can really do at that price either. So maybe it's just pass or pass for this one for me. I'm probably just going to be sitting this one straight out. And as you are so fond of saying, Joe, if Dudakova does hit the mark, it'll be a big pork chop to eat. But I think I'm going to set my sights a little further up the card and leave this one be tomorrow. What do you think about that strategy, Joe?
Yeah, so quick story on Dudakova, right? You referenced that, her fight against Nunes, she essentially won within the first minute on an injury, which when you win in the first minute on DraftKings, you roll up quite a score.
Yeah.
So the quick story here is that I've actually gotten into it pretty big in Rainmakers for UFC. And there was a gated contest, meaning that, if you bet some level of criteria, and anybody who plays Major League gets invited to these gated contests. So I entered a bunch of lineups into this contest, and I had a lineup with Dudakova as captain, and I ended up winning the contest because of that. It was the trip to go see the Boston card by DraftKings. So you go up there and they give you like $700 for travel expenses and tickets to the fight, and got a chance to kind of hang out with Rob Font and Calvin Cater, which was very cool. The New England Cartel guys joined us for dinner, so it was really cool. But it was all due to Dudakova. Now, Jin Fry is really an atomweight. That's what she fought a lot of fights at atomweight in Invicta. UFC does not have an atomweight. Jin Fry is also a rocket scientist. I don't mean that figuratively either. I mean that like literally. She's like literally a rocket scientist. Like that's her day job. So she's a really smart girl. Given her record, which is I believe 2-5 in the UFC or something like that.
It's not good.
I have to believe that unless she wins, which is I think unlikely here. This is probably her last fight in the UFC. She's also about 37 years old. Dudakova, I see Dudakova getting the win here. I don't think it's going to be pretty. I think she's going to use her strength and maybe muscle. Jin Fry, I don't want her to fall into anything stupid. But I'll have shares. I'm kind of with you that her price is really expensive and the line seems incredibly wide. I do see her getting the win, but there might be some nervous moments. I also think because it's a 13 fight card and because her salary is so high, and the perception that the line is wide is she might be underowned. So there might be a reason to play her as a pivot or a contrarian play. I mean, look, when are you ever getting Islam Makhachev and Chimaev for under 9K, right? Like, when are you seeing a slate where neither one of those guys on the slate, never mind the fact that they're on the same slate, are not 9K? I mean, so many lineups are going to be built around using those two fighters. And if you use those two fighters, it's going to be very hard to get Dudakova in, right? So anyway, I'm going to pick Dudakova. I don't know that it will be pretty, but I'm going to pick her, and I'll have shares. I don't expect to get too much a Fry, and if that's the case, if I get burned by Jinyu Frey, so be it. I'll probably be at market or less.
Yeah, Jinyu Fry, I mean, just not really dangerous anywhere. So even the 7,200, if she wins, I would say probably cash or cash plus at best. I don't think she'd be optimal in a win unless she does crazy stupid. I couldn't see it. I mean, anything can happen. It's MMA, but if you're playing 1,000 lineups, go ahead, throw some Jinyu Fry in your GPPs. But anyway, Drake, are we making this unanimous, or are you going to wow us with your first dog play of the night?
Absolutely not. I will completely X Jinyu Fry out of my pool entirely. I have no faith in her. She's lost 3 in a row. Her last fight that she did win was against Ashley Yoder, and she arguably could have lost that fight. So to me, the way that I see it, Dudakova is the younger talent. She's got far more ways to win. And you brought up the price, and I was going to mention what Joe said as well. She very well could go, as one of those sneaky plays. There's a lot of people above her, five fighters above her, all who have a chance to score really, really well. So Dudakova could, be one of those contrarian plays that just sneaks her way in, especially if she gets another first round finish, which is entirely possible. Her grappling is on point. If you go watch her takedowns in her contender fight against Maria Silva, I mean, it's beautiful. She knows exactly what she's doing. I fully expect her to get at least 2-3 takedowns in the first round of this fight. And if it ends there, she's already over 100.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I always do like looking at those pay up contrarian plays. And grappling is always a key, and soft opponent, but this one might be a little too far for me. I'll have a couple. We'll have to see. But for now, we'll move on to the next fight, which is Nathaniel Wood at 9,000 taking on Muhammad Naimov at 7,200. Line on this fight. Another widely lined one. We got Nathaniel Wood. I will go with this one at plus 350, at minus 350, taking on Naimov at plus 270. And I think this is one where Naimov is going to try to have to ground the more planted Muay Thai striker in Nathaniel Wood. If he doesn't, he's going to get beat up very badly. Not that Nathaniel Wood can't wrestle grapple himself. He can, and we've seen it. Not his primary weapon. I think generally the dynamic in this fight is going to be that he's going to be trying to stay on the feet while Naimov is going to try to take him to the ground. That could mute his scoring a little bit, because if he doesn't have space and, they're up against the fence a lot, they're in 50-50 spots a lot, especially up against the fence, could sort of blunt the scoring a little bit. I do think that at the very least, because of the volume and his own grappling ability, that Nathaniel Wood is at least a cash play. Not so sure in GPPs. And Drake, I'll go to you first. How are you seeing this fight?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I know a couple of people that are on Naimov, and I couldn't really figure out why. If you go back to his contender series fight, he lost against Colin Anglin. You go back to his fights before and after, up until Jamie Malarkey, and there's nobody there. And the fight against Jamie Malarkey, he was losing until he happened to get that knockout. Jamie kind of beat himself in that fight. Nate Wood is, in my opinion, he's one of the smarter fighters in that division, and I fully expect him just to circle around and lace into him constantly. But it is one of those fights where, in 15 minutes, he may not score enough to hit the optimal. So shares will probably be down on him.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. Joe, what do you think? You're making this one unanimous, or are you
Yes, but
eliminating?
with a question mark. So
All right, sure.
so Wood is not a very big featherweight, right? This is I think only his second or third fight at featherweight, and he was rocked several times by Andre Thiele. So his chin concerns me a little bit. Like, we had questions with Malarkey's chin, and Malarkey got nuked by Nimarov. I do think Wood technically is a better fighter. I don't know. I know he had issues cutting the 135. Fine. I don't think anyone should do that to their body. And 145 is an easier weight for him to fight at, but he's not a very big 145er, and that's my fear. And the fact that, look, he was in trouble a couple of times in that fight, obviously ended up pulling it out, and he's got heart. I just don't know how many times he can do that. So yes, I like Wood. I think he's pretty much better everywhere. Look, it's no secret because our friend Brett Apley on Mayo Media Network gave Wood out as his GPP play. He gives a cash play, a GPP play, and an underdog. And, he wanted to be a little different, a little not contrarian, but a little different. And with everybody, with the main event fighters. And, he gave that out as his GPP play. I'm with you, Chris. I don't know if I like Wood as much on DraftKings as I do just as a bet, because I think he's going to win the fight. But I don't know. Like, it remains to be seen what level of power he has at 145 and, being able to finish this fight. So I like him. I think he's going to win, but I could easily see him hitting a decision at 9K. I don't know if he's going to get enough points to make it worthwhile. So yeah, give me Wood, but I do have a bit of a question mark behind that.
I'm gonna throw something in on that real quick. You brought up the fight with Thiele, and he did wobble him a couple of times, but I think that was more to do with Wood's positioning. I don't think he's going to put himself in that position again. You go back and watch the fight against Jordan. I mean, we all know how Jordan fights. He gets in your face. He's a dirty boxer, and he's got power. We know how he is. And Wood dominated that fight, really. Jordan got his strikes in and everything, but the way that he survived that fight, I think it's going to be really similar to this one. But I mean, still score wise, he's definitely a better bet than he is a play on DK.
Good ad, Drake.
And I would throw in quickly as well, Andre Thiele has always been a tricky, underrated kind of striker. Okay, coming up next, our next fireworks in this one. Watch out, folks. It is Ashton Jubilee at 9,300, taking on Mike Breeden at 6,900. Line on this fight, another heavy one, although not quite as heavy as ones we've been seeing. Minus 270 for Ashton Jubilee, plus 220 for Mike Breeden. And I will let these lunatics go in a second, but I'm going to give you the rational explanation first. Not that I don't have any concerns about Ashton Jubilee, because I do. I'm kind of worried that he's just he's so grapple heavy that if he faces resistance on takedowns, he's not really going to know how to handle it, especially a guy who throws so big and so hard as Mike Breeden. But I always kind of like those fighters too, the kind of fighters who just throw themselves into messes, and we have a couple more of them on this card at a lower weight class. Just throw themselves into messes because they know that they're going to come out on top in a scramble. Not only is that fun to watch, but it also leads to very good scores on DraftKings and DFS in general if they pull it off. Jubilee 115 for the last win there, and I think only 2 takedowns in that performance, but a lot of ground control time, and of course the first round finish. Breeden, of course, throws hard, very square, very easy, I think, to get in on those hips and take them down. And I think once they get on the mat, it's going to be pretty hard for Breeden to get anything done, really. So the most dangerous part of this fight is going to be we'll call it the Grant Dawson zone. First couple of minutes where he's going to be on his feet and he could get lit up, absolutely. But I think Jubilee, as a guy, and Joe, I think, could maybe speak to this. We'll throw to him in a minute, because I'm not sure where the percentages are going to end up here, because we know Jubilee as a guy who hasn't really won, but we know Breeden as a guy who's been in the UFC, hasn't really won. We don't know Jubilee at all, so it's kind of hard for me to see where these percentages are ending up. I'm taking Jubilee and the grappling upside. I can certainly see Breeden much more of the flyer GPP play, in my opinion, but we will let these guys explain themselves right now, and we'll start with Joe. Joe, why are you picking Mike Breeden?
Okay, so this is my James Tahuna pick. I think this line should be pick. I bet Mike Breeden at plus 225. Let me tell you about the Indian regional scene in MMA. That's where Alaska FC fighters go to build up their record. I like the way that but the fact that, to Nan's point there, Breeden missed weight by 3.5 pounds, which means he really didn't try. He got to a point where he said, you know what, I'm not going to cut anymore. So he's already given money to Jubilee, which has got to piss him off. So now he's got to win to make any kind of money at all. He has fought a literal murderer's row of fighters. How would you like to be in the UFC and have your first 3 fights go against Alex Hernandez, Nathan Levy, and Terrence McKinney? Now, the fight with Levy in particular stands out. Levy has looked really good recently. He took Levy down 3 times and landed 115 strikes, put up 62.3 points in a loss, right? I think I would take that at 6.9K.
Yeah.
I would take the 62 points maybe. But I really do think he's the better fighter here. I think he's going to win. Now, again, James Tahuna, for those of you guys that haven't been watching us from day one, is James Tahuna was a fighter that was a 5-2 favorite over a Canadian hockey player named Steve Bosey, who was on his couch and got called up. And Tahuna had quite a losing streak going into that fight. But the reason why he was a 5-2 favorite is because of who he fought against and who beat him and the better fighters who beat him. It did not end up well for James Tahuna. Bosey just KO'd him, flash KO'd him. So when I say James Tahuna, I am trying to buck the trend where the guy that actually is lost to better fighters is in fact going to win, in which case I believe he is. I don't understand this line at all. The line has tightened up a little bit, not much. I think it's still out there at plus 220. And I will give you guys, as our hot take, I'll give you guys a parlay that I've also played, or I should say a round robin that I also played. But I like Mike Breeden. I like him inside the distance at plus 400. I took a little taste of that. And I think this line is wrong. I think it's really wrong. And again, when you're fighting in a scene where Alaska FC fighters go to build their records, I can't endorse a fighter coming from that. And he did not look particularly good in his, road to the championship series or whatever series he was in to get him a contract in the UFC. So I like Mike Breeden. I expect to have a fair amount of ownership. I'm definitely going to be over market. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm 2 to 3 times market. At 6.9K, you could really do a lot. And just quick tip here, and I know I've been going on for too long. There are slates where I like to build my lineups from the bottom up, meaning like I look at what dogs I like, and I'll put them in the optimizer just to see how many combinations of the higher level fighters I could get by using those 1 or 2 underdogs that I like. So I expect that's going to be the way that I build lineups. I haven't built lineups yet for this card. I tend to always wait for there to be late news so I don't have to go back and edit everything. But when I build lineups, I expect to build them from the bottom up, and I'm going to have a lot of Breeden. You're up, Drake.
All right. Drake, add to the insanity, if you would.
As I will. So, Joe, before you got on the show, I was talking to Chris how the more I go into this, the more that I look at it, the more I like Breeden. And for every reason that Joe highlighted, it's pretty much the case. Jubilee likes to stand tall before he shoots in. And, I mean, like one of the comments that says that Breeden was smaller in the standoff. You're damn straight he was. And Jubilee stands tall, and that's a great way to get your chin just taken right out. So I like Breeden more and more. Everybody knows that he's 0-3, but like Joe said, his competition that he fought was actually pretty darn good. And, this is a really, really good spot to get him at 6.9.
So a question then for both of you. Would Jubilee qualify, even though you don't like him, as one of the contrarian payoffs, or do you think he'll be more highly owned than some of those other?
I don't think he's going to be highly owned at all. I think he's priced way too high. But if there are people that are just looking at, I think he's probably the highest priced. I don't want to say something I'm not sure of, but in terms of his salary correlated to his odds, I don't think there's a real good metric there for Jubilee. But again, I'd have to look at it a little closer and see who's around him, but I can't believe he's going to be highly owned. So yeah, Like, if you want to be unique, if you want to be a contrarian, I will tell you that I do 20 hand builds and the rest when I'm doing more than 20 lineups. And I don't do more than 20 lineups every week, but this week I am. My first 20 are always hand builds. I would be very surprised if I got to Jubilee in one of my 20 hand builds. I'll certainly have shares of him in, you know, in the other 130 that I'm doing. You know, I like to spread to everybody, but I'd be very surprised if I could create a lineup that I like with Jubilee in there in my 20 hand builds.
All right. And so now we move on to, oh my goodness, another squash line. And these are going to get better soon, but they got much worse first. It is Javid Basharat at, oh, I got mesmerized by the line here. Where's the DraftKings number? It is Javid Basharat at 9,400, taking on Victor Henry at 6,800. The line on this fight, and you'll see why right now, minus 600 for Javid Basharat, plus 425 for Victor Henry. And I agree with the general sentiment. I think Basharat's going to win, but I can't ever endorse this line almost on anybody at minus 600. I like Basharat a lot. I like his pressure. I like the crispness of his strikes. I like that he'll mix in his takedowns. Love that pressure. Victor Henry, you know, the guy who came in on his UFC debut, beat Honey Barcelos. Now, maybe that win doesn't look as great in hindsight. I think Barcelos kind of fell off a little bit harder than some of us. Certainly, I expected him to have gone a little bit farther. I don't know if he was ever title chip contender material, but I did expect him to go a little bit further nonetheless. Victor Henry, you know, definitely very scrappy, definitely powerful, definitely has some quickness. I'm going to take Basharat here. This line is tough. I mean, I know that Basharat mixes everything in well. He could score really well, even in a 3-round decision with the wrestling and the striking. I get it all. I don't know. It's a tough one for me. Drake, help me assuage this here. Why is Basharat a good play for DFS?
I'm actually one of the ones that's not on him for DFS.
All right.
You know, and there's a few reasons for it. Don't get me wrong. Basharat's, you know, both of them, really, him and his brother, are, you know, they've got excellent striking, very technical, very clean, and then the wrestling on top of it. What worries me about this fight, and I think Victor Henry is live for a few reasons. He's one of those fighters that is in the fight the entire time. He's never been finished in almost 30 fights. And I mean, he's a guy that fights for your money. He's not going to give up. He's not going to, you know, sit down on his back. He's going to be in there every second. He loves to box, you know, he loves dirty boxing. He likes to be up close. He likes to throw elbows and knees, and his wrestling isn't terrible. So, I mean, Basharat, there's no doubt about it. He should win this fight. The odds are quite a bit off, but for DFS, I'd rather be low owned.
Yeah, no, I agree totally. Joe, do you agree as well, or are you? I mean, I think this would be your ultimate contrarian, but
I can't believe that we haven't had Drake on sooner. I mean, if I was playing cash, I would have Victor Henry as one of my 6 in cash. You know, this guy has put up 200 points in both of his wins. Only lost to Rafael Sunsao. I don't see Basharat as a finisher. I don't have him up, but I don't think he's been a high scorer in any of his fights either. Look, I am going to pick. I don't like him as much as I like Breeden, but I'm going to pick him here as an underdog. Wow. I think it'd be fight. I think it could be close, and I think, unfortunately, I'm not sure how the judging is going to work, but I think closely judged fights are going to go to the regional fighters, which in this case is Basharat. Because I don't see Henry having finishing upside here, but I do like him a bit. And I think he makes a lot of sense in cash at 6.8K if I was going to play cash. So I'm going to probably be over market. I have to look at what ownership is, but I'm going to be over market to Henry, and I'll probably be under to Basharat. All
right. So 2 major dog picks. I'm glad I am not the crazy one on the panel today. But for now, we will go to, this fight is so much fun because I love that this fight is as closely lined as it is, but we'll get to it. It is Trevor Peek at 8,200, taking on Muhammad Yahya at 8,000. Line on this fight, Peak at -170, Muhammad Yahya at +140, and I have resolved never to pick Trevor Peak in a UFC fight. I'm never gonna do it. He's too wild. He throws hammer fists from boxing range. I doubt he's even looking at his opponent half the time when he's swinging. My concern is, and I do have some, is that Muhammad Yahya can start slowly sometimes. I think he does throw the crisper shots for sure. He can grapple a little bit, but I've definitely seen fights of his where he's really slow getting off the blocks. Could be a thing where he fights to the speed of his opponent, in which case he'll be fighting plenty fast here. But yeah, Trevor Peak is not a UFC fighter. I refuse to officially pick him in any fight he's in, but he could get a win here just by he's still at a stage where he's fighting fighters who could lose to just a swarming opponent. So as long as he's at this stage of opponent, he's live, but I will never officially pick him. And we're going to start with Joe. Are you taking the Whirling Dervish, or are you taking his opponent?
I like Trevor Peak a lot in this fight.
Okay.
I mean, he opened at +120, and now he's -170. So there's a lot of money. I don't know if there's still enough value, but burying the lead, Peak is one of my parlay pieces in my round robin. I do like Peak here. I think this is a perfect matchup for him. I don't think a whole hell of a lot of his opponent at all. And I think this is a very winnable fight. So I kind of, I'm not sure what Nan is saying here. Is an LFA prelim?
He's the guy who would fight at the prelims on LFA.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. Yeah. So I'm on Trevor Peak here. I have him in my I have him in my round robin with Mr. Breeden. So give me Trevor Peak. I think this fight has the best inside the distance line on the card. I may be wrong about that, but I think I'm pretty sure I'm not. So you want to have exposure to this fight. I'm going to have some of both sides, but I like Peak a lot. So I'm going to be over market on Peak.
Okay. I will never say the sentence, I like Peak a lot in my life. But let's see if Drake will. Drake, what do you got for this one?
Before I go into that, unless the fight moved, I think we skipped over Azadar and Dumas.
Yes, we did, and okay. We will circle back to it. But go right ahead. Thank you, sir.
Anyways, no, I'm with Joe again. I love Trevor Peak, and you can say whatever you want. His fight, the way that I look at it is I don't see how Yahya has a chance to win. I don't know where he wins until maybe the third round if Peak has gassed himself out. And by that time, Yahya might be 6 feet in the ground. Because if he starts out slow like he has in the majority of his fights, he is going to get swarmed immediately, and you could potentially be looking at a 60-second bonus on DK. So, and at 8,200, that's going to be massive. It's instant optimal, and I'm definitely going to be overweight on Peak.
Yeah, no, he starts slow. There's no question about it, and that could mean disaster. But come on, guys, Trevor Peak can't fight in the UFC. Come on, guys, he can't do it. All right. We got our verdict there. And as promised, I will circle back. I was just so excited to talk about Trevor Peak, but we will go now to the fight that I very clearly missed. Oh, actually, I missed it 2 back. I'm so sorry about that. But nevertheless, it is. Here we go. As we say, Cedricus Dumas, thank you, at 8,400. Taking on Abu Zaitar at 7,800. The line on this fight, Dumas at -250. Zaitar coming back +205. As far as I am concerned, Cedricus Dumas does not have a UFC win yet. He had a win over Cody Brundage. That did not count. Cody Brundage just quits in every fight now. I mean, for at least the past 6 months to a year, starting with this fight against the Black Belt Hunter, whose actual name I have forgotten, but that is his nickname, when he jumped for the guillotine, which was a remarkably bad decision in that fight. And now in Brundage's fight with Dumas, he jumped for about 4 or 5 guillotines. It was the lost position every time. Really just gave the fight to Dumas. I'm not counting that. He's actually going to be in there with somebody who's going to try to win this time. Abu Zaitar, been a couple of years, I think, since we've seen him in the octagon, but very tough. That fight against Marc-Andre Barrio, who we're talking about pressure fighters, we're talking about relentless guys. Marc-Andre Barrio is going to be the guy who hits the gas, and 101 strikes Zaitar landed in that fight. So he's going to be in there. He's going to try to win. Dumas, I can't trust him to beat real fighters, I guess what you'd say. Zaitar can try to wrestle. He can try to grapple. He had no problem trying to wrestle Vitor Miranda, also a kickboxer. I think he's going to come in here and know what to do. I just can't see myself clear to picking Dumas in this spot. And Drake, we'll start with you. Are you going with Dumas for his first, and I say first, UFC win?
I'm going to start out by saying I hate this fight. I'm not a fan of it. I don't care for it. Zaitar, like you said, he last fought 2 years ago, and before that, it was another 2 years that he last fought. He's now 37. He clearly lost a step in that fight, and that was 2 years ago. If Dumas has any brain cell, he'll be patient in this fight. He will let Zaitar gas, and then he will just wrap him up. Zaitar will be the better grappler, the better wrestler. This is a fight that he should win. Zaitar does have power, so Dumas does need to respect it. But yeah, I don't see Zaitar coming out and being this new fighter that can do anything more than what Cody Brundage did. So I'm on Dumas.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I respect that take. Certainly not marquee names here is one way to put it. Joe, who you got in this one?
So here's the deal, right? So Zaitar is not a full-time fighter, right? He's independently wealthy. If you notice, he only fights on cards in the Middle East. I heard he is specifically asked to be on this card just because he wanted to invite friends to watch the fight. Seriously. So I think that with a full camp, I would pick Zaitar over Dumas. And I'm actually still going to pick him just because I don't think much of Dumas here. But I think he's a 1 to 1.5 rounder bust fighter. I think I think he could potentially, because he throws hard, he throws wild shots, he could connect with something because, we're not talking about a Mensa candidate that he's going up against. So if he connects with something, I could certainly see a greasy type of knockdown, so for that reason, I'll have a few shares of him, and I'll have a few shares the other way in case Zaitar death gasses. But I also don't love this fight. I'm going to have very low exposure to it just because I really don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I could see multiple outcomes. So I'll for a pick, I'll pick a Zaitar, not very confidently. And again, I will spread some ownership around this fight, but I don't love it. And I'm only spreading ownership around because I think there's a chance that Zaitar can finish him before he death gasses. So I'll take a flyer that way, but I don't love this fight at all. But I'm gonna take a shot with the dog at 7.8K.
All right, moving on, and all caught up. It is Islam Makhachev at 9,600 taking on the veteran Tim Elliott at 6,600. Line on this one. Where did it go? It is here. Minus 400 Makhachev, plus 300 Tim Elliott. And I think in a vacuum, this would pretty clearly be Makhachev's fight. Not only is Makhachev the better grappler, but we've seen people beat Tim Elliott just like this, where he grapples with them, he either gets himself tired or throws himself out of position, and then he gets submitted. So that could be bing, bang, boom, we're done, except we have not seen Muhammad Makhachev since he got his knee torn apart in a win over Jairo Fialho. In a bizarre fight where he may have tapped 3 or 4 times before that. Don't want to open up that can of worms, but it did kind of look weird. Anyway, at the end of the fight, even though he won, was having trouble walking, had to have surgery, I believe, right? And now he's just coming back. So it's going to be really hard to know what that leg is going to look like. Obviously, to wrestle, you need that plant leg. You need to be able to use it. If Tim Elliott goes for the legs, not only what is that going to be like for the actual physical act, but is it going to mess with him psychologically? Oh my God, he's going for my leg. So there's a lot of things to consider here. And 6,600. If this was a more shallow card, like if this was 11 fights, I would say play both of these guys, because this could be like the loser scores 41 and the winner scores 95 or something like that. But 13 fights is a little too much to do that, I would say. But 6,600, man, we were talking about space saving before. Joe was. That's a lot of salary to save. I know that this is not. Makhachev should win the fight, but it's still the kind of fight that Tim Elliott likes, even if he's not that great at it. So I don't know. I gotta have a couple shares in GPP, but the pick is Makhachev, and we'll start with Joe first, and we'll start with him not only because he's shaking his head in agreement with me, which kind of gets you on the first pick, but also want to hear his thoughts. So Joe, what do you think about this fight?
Yeah, I'm with you, Chris. Like if this was a more shallow card, I would be much more apt to take, to give Elliott more of a shot here. And I know that's not necessarily logical, but I do have dogs that I like more. I don't think he's a bad cash pivot off of Victor Henry, because he could put up a good score in a defeat. We've seen him do that in the past. The issue with Tim Elliott, and he looked much better in his last fight, but he got to the point where he was partying really hard. I think we know his backstory with Gina Mazzani and Kevin Kroll, and the poor guy got cheated on his wedding day by his ex-teammate. And, but what makes me feel a little bit less sad about that for Tim Elliott is that when he went on the Contender Series, he was married and had kids, and, he won the contest, and there goes the wife. He goes to train in Thailand, and the rumors were he was partying like a rock star. And then he simply bonus hunted. Like he was just looking for bonuses. He was death gassing after a round or a round and a half. And he seems to be back on track. That was kind of good color that he's sponsoring the guy that's fighting Kevin Kroom and bare knuckles. So I will have shares of Elliott, and all your points about the leg, and I'll just throw in a few more. Hasn't really fought great competition, Makhachev, and he is really expensive. So I think he's be very hard to get him in the same lineup with the two favorites in the main and the co-main. So I'll have shares. I mean, this is kind of a fight where I don't know that I'm there yet to fade Makhachev, because I want to see how he fights against having a true test against Tim Elliott. And if this fight is difficult for him, maybe when he steps up next time, I'll fade him. But I guess I will reluctantly pick Makhachev to win here. But I expect to have shares of Elliott because, one, I think that he's live, and I think he can put up points. So I'll take Makhachev, but, I certainly would say play Elliott in some GPPs. And even cash if you want to pivot from Henry.
Yeah, I agree with your alternate reasoning there. Kind of the opposite of what we always say, which would be he has to lose a fight like this before I could pick him to lose. And so that's where I think I am too. Drake, what about you? How are you seeing this one?
Elliott did look better in his last fight. Prior to that, he did fight. He got a win against Islam Makhachev that arguably he lost. I don't think that he won that fight. But his last time out, he beat Victor Altamirano, and we don't really know the status on Altamirano, where he stands, in the rankings. How good is he? So if you look at the records of who's fought who, Tim Elliott's won 4 of the last 5. Not the greatest competition. Makhachev's won all 4 of his UFC fights. Not the greatest competition. I think the biggest issue that I have in this fight is Elliott likes to put himself in danger, and you can't do that against Makhachev. And this could easily be one of those fights where Makhachev does another 10 takedowns and just completely blows the slate up. Or it could be, 3 takedowns in the first round and he submits him. No matter which way you look at it, I think the only way that Elliott wins this fight is if he gets the takedown and he controls him. I don't think he's got a chance to submit him. I don't think he has a chance to knock him out. It's going to be pure control. So I prefer Makhachev. At 9,600, it is hard to fit him in. But, once again, you have to have shares of him because of that takedown threat. And, the points just add up so quickly when they do that.
Yeah, and I would add, I mean, he did better at it the last fight, but I don't really think of Tim Elliott as a control grappler, more of just a sort of a chaotic scrambler. So definitely not quite the situation. More. Huh?
That worries me even more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we are going to move on to the main card, but before we do that, we are going to take a quick break for our audio podcast listeners. And we're back with the main card. I hope you people out there in audio land went and got a snack or whatever it is you did, because we are moving on to the main card. It is Said Nurmagomedov at 8,800 taking on Moin Gafarov at 7,400. Line on this fight. I guess I have to search for all of them now because Best Fight Odds doesn't want to cooperate. It is minus 250 for Said Nurmagomedov and plus 210 for Moin Gafarov. And if we're looking at pure fade fights, this is probably one of those for me. I don't really see either of these guys as either A, high volume threats, or B, I know Gafarov is going to try for takedowns. I don't expect him to be that successful against Nurmagomedov. Another one of these fights where we could see a lot of stalling 50-50, a lot of like one strike apiece from range, I go, you go, that kind of thing. This fight does not interest me at all. I'm way more interested in the Azaitar fight as far as DFS goes, just for the chaos that could ensue when you get two sloppy fighters in the cage with each other, than I am for this, which I think is just going to be like a sanitized kind of, like I say, back and forth. Maybe everybody tries to grapple and everybody fails, and then Said wins by decision. So that's kind of what my read is on this fight. But we'll take it to our guests to see if they have a different view. Drake, how you seen this fight?
I'm not a fan of Gafarov at all. I mean, he came out and lost to Castaneda. Castaneda's not much of anything, at least anymore. For cash plays, Nurmagomedov is, for me, one of the safer ones on the slate. He, particularly if he goes to his wrestling, and everybody knows Said is always more of a striker, but he came out, he wrestled in his last fight. He shows that he is able to do that. And Gafarov doesn't have much wrestling anywhere. He's not a wrestler. He's not a grappler. He's pretty much a pure striker. So, I mean, if Said is smart, he'll come out and just put him down and he'll keep him on the ground. We could see a traditional Nurmagomedov fight where it's on the ground the whole time. But I like Said in this one. I'm with you. I don't really want to, I don't want to be overweight on it on either fighter. I don't think that there's a high score that's coming out of this fight, but definitely on Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe, you seen any more in this one than we are, or are you kind of bypassing it as well?
No, I like Said as a bet, and this is the third leg of my 3-leg parlay with Trevor Peak, Said, and Mike Breeden, which pays pretty decently, by the way. So yeah, I like Said too. I mean, I just don't know, how he's going to score. That's the problem. I mean, his scoring has been very erratic, and at his price point, like I think he's $100 more than Islam. He's going to be hard to get to, right? Now, yes, he's capable of putting up a good score. And like Drake alluded to, I'm not a huge fan of his competition here. So he could certainly put up a decent number. I'll have some shares of him, but I'll probably be at market.
All right. Oh, sorry, Joe, to cut you off.
Nope, that's it. He's my pick.
Okay. All right, then. Moving on. It is Ikram Aliskerov at 9,500 taking on Warley Alves at 6,700. I feel like we have a lot of 9,000 versus 6,000s on this card, especially a lot that is for a pay-per-view. Anyway, line on this fight, minus 550 for Aliskerov, plus 475 for Warley Alves. And this is kind of an interesting one for me too, at least in GPPs, because Aliskerov, wasn't, doing the best against Phil Hawes in the debut there. Caught him with a shot, won the fight, definitely has power, definitely is a fluid striker. but so is Worley Alves. And Worley Alves obviously could get tired, obviously could, blow the water really quick, but the first round might be interesting. I mean, we saw Worley Alves come out, get the body shot TKO on a fighter who now is not thought of so highly anymore. But at the time, nobody giving Worley Alves a shot in that fight either. I didn't love what I saw in Alaskarov before the Hawes fight. I did think he was too hittable. I actually picked Hawes in that fight. Was feeling good for about 2 minutes until the shot landed. I got to go ahead and pick Alaskarov, I guess, because I can't trust Worley Alves to carry himself for 15 minutes anymore. And I don't expect him to come out and storm and finish. I expect him to have spots of success in this fight, Worley Alves. I do. But I just don't think he's going to be able to carry it through. And I think ultimately Alaskarov wins the fight. If he gasses and if he gets finished, could lead to a decent score for Alaskarov. So the finish is live. So I guess you have to consider paying up for him also. And that's a little more enticing because of Alves' history of getting left for dead in there. But that's a little hard for me too. But the pick is Alaskarov. And Joe, we'll start with you first. How you seeing this fight?
Yeah, so Alaskarov is 14-1. His one loss is to Khamzat Chimaev. That is his only loss. He's 14-1. You're sitting around, doing whatever you do in Dagestan. I don't know, man, like eating bear meat, whatever. And you're told that you're not fighting Paul Costa. You're not fighting Imanov. You're fighting Wally Alves on short notice, right? This is the easiest of those three opponents by a mile. Now, Alves has got to be the oldest 32 years old fighter in the UFC. I mean, he seems like he's been around, for 20 years, right? Like Wally Alves has been around for a long time. Now, he's always overly muscular, and he gasses when he has full camps. Taking this fight on short notice is not going to bode well for him. Now, a lot has been made of his 80% takedown defense. I get it. He's fighting a badass Russian on short notice. I like Alaskarov here. I don't know how easy it's going to be to get to him at 9.5K. But I do like him here. I'll take a flyer or two with Alves. Apparently he has this really good guillotine that I heard about. But again, a badass Russian, finding out that he's not fighting, two guys that are arguably much better than Wally Alves. Alves is flying from Brazil, to Fight Island. I mean, I just think, all the optics. Give me Alaskarov here. I got to figure out how to get him into my DraftKings lineups, but I certainly like him here.
Yeah, I think he has to be the play one way or the other. Drake, do you agree, or are you going to amaze us all here?
Alaskarov is one of my favorite plays on the slate.
All right.
Joe, you just brought up his guillotine. The last time he had a submission win and the last time he had a guillotine was back in 2015. I don't see that coming. So good luck with that one. But yeah, he took this fight on short notice. Like you already mentioned, his cardio is already not the greatest. And I think Alaskarov is going to play around with him the first 2 minutes, and then he puts him away in the next three, sometime within the next three. He is by far the quicker fighter in this one. And I just think Alaskarov just runs through him.
All right. Yeah, no, absolutely could happen. Let's move on to the next fight. It is Magomed Ankalaev at 9,100 taking on Johnny Walker at 7,100. Line on this fight. Oh, there it is. Minus 360 for Magomed Ankalaev. The comeback on Johnny Walker plus 285. And Johnny Walker is the most fascinating fighter in the UFC to me. He's been in the organization for 5 years. I think longer than that, even maybe 6 years. And I have no idea what kind of fighter he is at all. He's either winning fights by explosivity or he's having these very boring kind of like, I'm going to get to SBG and try to become an outfighter now kind of point battles. Even the last couple of fights that he won were due to explosion. He kind of just, had Paul Craig on one leg and started punching him, and then he won the fight. That was one of the infamous Anthony Smith hurts himself fights, I believe. and they kind of limped to a decision. And then Kutalaba, they just went back and forth scrambling at each other for one round until he found a sub. He's never fought a fighter like Ankalaev, who is just methodical, patient, defensive, and good everywhere. I would really be surprised if this is the kind of fighter that Johnny Walker could just blitz and get out of there. I really don't see it happening. I think at 9,100, I think Ankalaev is like the perfect cash play with some upside, a little bit of upside maybe in GPPs. He does tend to fight slower, but Johnny Walker fights so quickly it might not matter, or at least tends to. We've seen exceptions, but yeah, I mean, if you're asking me who wins this fight, I literally think Magomed loses this fight almost never, and I really would be surprised if he gets out there and gets blitzed, and if he doesn't, he's just going to pick Johnny apart and maybe out wrestle him for good measure. So my pick is definitely Ankalaev, and we will go to Drake first. Drake, how do you see this?
I completely agree with you. I think Ankalaev is the best fighter in this division. He's certainly the most complete fighter in this division. He won that fight against Blachowicz. I cannot believe that they gave that a draw. It is still one of the most ridiculous calls of the year. Ankalaev should have the belt right now. That said, the winner of this fight should have another title shot coming up, and I'm with you. It should be Ankalaev. Johnny Walker has 7-inch reach advantage, and I think that's the only advantage he's going to have in this fight. And this is one of those fights where if he tries to come out wild, he's either going to get put on his back or he's going to get countered right in the face. So I love Ankalaev. I think I agree with you. He is one of the safer cash plays, and especially at his price point.
Yeah, I think this one is straightforward, but Joe has surprised me before. Joe, how you seeing this one?
Chris, you speak any Russian?
I do not, sir.
So I know one word of Russian.
Yes.
And the one word of Russian I know is Skuchny.
Okay.
And Skuchny is Russian for boring. And that is how Ankalaev fights, right? So your point is well taken as it relates to cash games. I don't think the UFC likes him all that much because he's not a really exciting fighter. I agree it was kind of a travesty. Even Blachowicz didn't think he won that fight. Interesting judging there. But, he just doesn't do enough. I mean, he's low volume. He looks to counter. I would love him to get his wrestling to work and make short work out of Johnny Walker, who's just got flaws galore in his game. I wish I had a crystal ball, because if he fights the way he's capable of fighting against an opponent like Johnny Walker, who is not in the same league as Jan Blachowicz, if he fights like he's capable of fighting, he could be a really good GPP play. Right. And probably underowned because he hasn't scored really well. I just don't know if he's going to do that. But in case he does, I'll have a couple shares. I don't know. I'll probably be right on ownership, whatever that is, in the mass entry. But he's the obvious pick for me.
Yeah, I do think that one was pretty straightforward. But now we get to something a little more dicey, and it is the co-main event. Now, there's something a little more interesting, certainly. It is Khamzat Chimaev at 8,900, taking on the former welterweight champ, Kamaru Usman, at 7,300. Line on this fight, it's so wide for a Kamaru Usman fight. It's minus 350 for Chimaev. Usman plus 260. And look, Usman has a lot going against him here. He's flying halfway around the world, or maybe all the way around the world. He's hasn't fought in a while, but now there's Chimaev, but we'll get to that. He's fighting at middleweight. This is technically a middleweight fight, I believe, which I don't think Usman has ever done before. I think that when he fought Sean Strickland, they were both middleweight, welterweights rather. So I don't think he's ever done that before. Nonetheless, Chimaev still doesn't have any. His one really good win against the guy he couldn't out-grapple, he had to go to absolute war with him. Absolute war with him. Whoever he couldn't out-grapple, I just don't see it. And I just don't see him out-grappling Usman even at the higher weight class. Now, what I will say is that we have seen when guys go up in weight, especially when they're not used to it, if it's like their first time up in a weight class, they have a harder time with the wrestling. We saw it, I think, most famously with Rockhold against Blachowicz, where he thought he was just going to come up to light heavyweight, take everybody down. That didn't happen. I think Usman is strong enough. I think he's big enough and a good enough wrestler where that's not going to make all that much difference here. But I do have to acknowledge that there are some major things going against Kamaru Usman. Still, I don't think we can fade him at this price. And I kind of wish Monk was here because I wonder if this has ever happened before where the big underdog in the fight has more average DraftKings points per fight than the big favorite does. It's 117.2 to 115.7. So that alone, if you're just looking at numbers there, that is kind of an incredible stat.
But I mean, you also have to look at the fact that most of Usman's fights of late have been 5 rounds.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, so that's a big part of that.
No, it's true. I was just pointing out that just sort of a curiosity on my part, more so that you don't really see the underdog better than the favorite in that way. But that is true and is a fair point. But still, I got to take Usman. Another one of these, and I don't want to cop out behind this saying, but I know I've already used it once tonight. But this is a fight where Chimaev has to win before I can pick him to win it. There's still so much we don't know about him, and I just don't know if he's ready to face this competition. I don't want to do MMA math here. We saw how easily Kamaru Usman beat Gilbert Burns, a tough first couple of minutes notwithstanding. So, yeah, I got to see it first. And for the savings, for the value, for the money, I'm taking Kamaru Usman. We will start this co-main event action with Joe, I believe. Joe, what do you got?
So we got Popgate, and we're not talking about we're not talking about like who Britney Spears has had sex with. Did it pop or did it not pop? Right? My look, I so want to pick Usman here. I mean, if this was a healthy Usman, 3 rounds is actually going to work in his favor here because he didn't have the training camp, right? Coming off of 5-round fights that both went deep, right? This is gonna be, he's gonna be able to manage his cardio a lot better here. My concern is what kind of shape is he in? How are his knees? All the points you made about Khamzat are 100% accurate. I mean, he's looked really good against some subpar guys. He's looked okay against good fighters, but he hasn't fought anyone remotely at the same level of Usman. So I really badly want to pick Usman here. And I will be playing Usman a fair amount in DraftKings, but I got to pick a winner here, and I'm going to pick Khamzat. Just again, because I am not as confident that his knees are right. I did not understand any of the whole dialogue that he was saying, or he was backtracking on whether his knee popped or not. An in shape Usman going 3 rounds and not 5 against the guy who hasn't been tested. Yeah, sign me up all day. And I'm going to take some shots at that. But absent that, I'm going to say Khamzat's the winner here.
All right. And Drake, what about you? You taking the dog, or are you rolling with Khamzat Chimaev?
I am also running with Chimaev. I'll have my shares of Usman just because, if you told me that Usman was going to come out pre-4th round in 30 seconds with 30 seconds left, Usman, I'd have him all day. It's hard to tell where he is mentally. It's hard to tell where he's at physically. And it's another short notice fight. It's a tough one to call. And, Khamzat's definitely going to have the speed, in this one. The biggest thing that worries me is if Usman can put him up into the clinch, because we haven't seen Khamzat work defensively in the clinch. He's fine offensively. There's no doubt about it. But Usman is definitely going to be a lot stronger at 185. And it's tough to say. I mean, I think you still have to have your shares of Usman. There's no doubt about it, because he can definitely still score well. And in 15 minutes, he could also finish him. This could be one of those fights where Khamzat just rushes forward and Usman finds the mark with a counter. He's got that type of power. But I got to go with Khamzat in this one, and just continue with the guy that's been fighting really, really well.
Yeah, no, I understand. My biggest concern, I just hope we don't see a TJ Dillashaw situation as concerns Usman. But as long as that happens, I feel pretty okay about it, but we shall see. All right, it's main event time, folks. It is Islam Makhachev at 8,700 taking on Alexander Volkanovski at 7,500. Line on this fight. No, that's not the Islam Makhachev fight I want. There it is. Minus 250 for Makhachev, plus 200 comeback on Volkanovski. And, this could be, I hate the term weight bully, not the least of which because Colby Covington invented it, seemingly, but because it's not really, that's just not all there is to it. With grappling, it's about weight distribution, and there's a lot more to sticking your opponent on his back than you weigh more than me. So I don't really like that aspect of it, but I will concede that when they were in those grapple positions, especially I'm thinking of the body lock that Volkanovski rather was in the second round, he did have some trouble getting away. Now, Islam didn't really hurt him or advance to more advantageous positions or work to finish in those positions. And of course, we know the third round, Islam kind of looking surprised on his back, kind of bleeding out the minutes there. So not a good look. They both hurt each other during the fight at different junctures. I still gotta like Volkanovski for the speed, of course, which I do, and I generally tend to pick speedier fighters here. And again, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but if a fight's this close, I'm going with the savings. And the bantamweight champion is the champion for a reason. I think he looked really good in that Makhachev fight. I didn't have a problem with Makhachev winning it. I thought that was fine. I didn't think it was a robbery or anything. But I just think with another bite at the apple, Volkanovski, I haven't lost all my faith in city kickboxing yet. So let's see how this goes. And I am picking Volkanovski, the two dogs in the co-main and the main event, and let's see what adjustments he has made. And Drake, we're going to kick this one off with you.
Yeah, I'm on Volkanovski as well. I was on him the first fight. I'm going to stay on him in this one. And if there's a fighter that knows how to make mid-fight adjustments better than just about everybody, it's Volkanovski. And I think he learned that in that first fight, he can't start slow. He can't be patient. And now he knows exactly what Islam's going to do. I think at this point, there's nothing new that Islam can show us, but there's plenty of new things that Volk can show us in this fight specifically. We know what Islam wants to do. He wants to on the mat. If he wants to stand and strike with Volkanovski for 25 minutes, he's going to get knocked out. So I like Volkanovski a lot in this one. I think that he's going to have a massive advantage on the feet. I think he's going to be quicker, and I don't think he's going to make the same mistake he did in the first one and allow that much control. Islam's big thing is he's going to try to submit him. And if the way that I look at it, if Brian Ortega couldn't submit him in that fight, I don't see Islam doing it. So I love Volkanovski. It's one of those things where if you're going to go Islam, there's no hate to it. It's an excellent play. There's going to be plenty of people, probably the majority of people on him, but I'm with Volkanovski and I'm going to be heavy on him.
Joe, take us home.
Yeah. So I'm letting the narrative talk me off of Volkanovski. By the way, I should preface this by saying Volkanovski is probably my favorite fighter. I have always made money off him. I love the guy. I remember when he debuted and I was kind of like reaching out to like Aussies on Twitter to see what they could tell me about him. I love the guy. Here's the problem that I'm having, and it's all narrative based. Remove the narrative and I am on Volkanovski. The last fight, full camp, Perth, Australia. Since then, injury, operation. Volkanovski was not allowed to train until mid-September. So he could not get back into the gym to do any training till mid-September. He had a birthday. He didn't know he was fighting. So what do you do when you're not training for a fight? You celebrate your birthday. So he had a nice wild birthday celebration. Now on 10 days notice, he's coming in to fight, the champ who is in shape, who's had a full camp, who is not flying to Perth, Australia, And again, I did not see ceremonial weigh-ins, so you guys tell me. I have seen several comments in Brett Apley's Discord that say Volkanovski's look soft. I've never seen Volkanovski look soft in my entire life. In any fight that he's ever been in, he's looked like he was chiseled out of stone. Now, you guys tell me, did either one of you guys see the weigh-ins, the ceremonial weigh-ins?
I did not. No, none of that stuff free fight really bothers me anyway.
It bothers me a lot.
And
that's the problem. So I'm going to have, look, I love Volkanovski. I'm going to have shares of Volkanovski. I won 2 555 tickets, 2 tickets to the 555 contest. I won him playing some other sport. And I am going to play one lineup. One of those lineups is going to have Volkanovski in it. Right. So I do like Volkanovski. I like him a lot. The deck is stacked against him here. And it's a 5-round fight. It's not like Usman coming into a 3-round fight. It's Volkanovski on a short camp, and not only a short camp, but he wasn't able to do any training from July to mid-September. He had the surgery in July, could not do any training till mid-September, right? So it's not like you could say, like, hey, these guys are professionals. He doesn't have a day job. He's always in the gym. Like, I get all that, right? That was not the case here because he had a scheduled surgery. So I'm really letting the narrative drive my pick here. And because of that, I'm picking Islam Makhachev.
All right. That closes the official fight picks, but we are not done yet. We are going to move over to hot takes. You got something juicy, something you feel like is going to play that will pay off. Let us know in the comments. We are going to start off right here. And Joe, I know, has been wanting to tell us his parlay. So, Joe, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I pretty much gave it out over the course of the show, but just, for people who are tuning in late, I did a round robin, which includes 2s and 3s, meaning that I win if 3 fighters win. I win if 2 of the 3 fighters win. And the round robin includes Mike Breeden. It includes Trevor Peek and includes Saad Nurmagomedov. Now, I also bet Mike Breeden straight up at plus 225. So that's my round robin. That's the bet I made. It will pay you, hang on, I will tell you, probably somewhere around 7-1 is, I'm guessing, something like that. If you wanted to put that in, I did hit a number of, aside from the PRP, I also hit some parlays last week as well. But that is my hot take.
All right. Drake, what about you? What do you got for us?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the same thing that I was talking to my buddy about, and I've got Volkanovski by knockout.
All right. And I just have to be antagonistic because I think it's going to be fun. I'm going to say Muhammad Yahya knocks out Trevor Peek, and that's plus 350, I believe. So that is the hot takes for this evening. I know that Drake is going to be in my DMs when that doesn't happen to tell me how bad of a hot take that was. But for now, let's see if we have anything in the comment section. Come on, boys. Move it or lose it. We got Nan here saying.
There we go.
Wow.
Love that. Man, that would be a huge hot take.
That'd be massive.
Now, that would be nice. And you can see it because as Joe said, and I think we all kind of agreed, a lot of holes in Walker's game. Ankalaev very sharp and don't need to be all that powerful when you're that sharp and your opponent is just sort of running into you, force and all that. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. All right, folks, that is going to do it then. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you, as always, Drake Burden, for filling in once again. I definitely enjoyed it, sir. You're welcome back anytime. You know that. We always enjoy having you. Great job this week. Everybody, good luck in your contest. Actually, and we didn't even mention this, by the way, in case you don't know, 10 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow morning, start of the card. So nice and early. Everybody get up to watch.
Hey, Chris, how does one follow Drake?
How does one follow Drake? Follow Drake on Twitter at dbergs. Do I have that right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So
and where else might one find Jay?
Well, also can find all of his lovely content on RotoWire.com, of course, as well as mine, my MMA matchup article, etc., etc., etc. So we have all of that out of the way. Joe, would you like to plug anything for
I
your
only do Twitter. So at Sun Tzu.
Okay.
I do some side work sometimes for DFS Army and Daily Fan MMA, but it's really kind of periodically. So yeah, you loved having Drake on. He's a smart man. He agreed with me a lot.
Yeah, we're not going to hold that against him at all, by the way.
Definitely want to have him on again. I think it would be really cool. And, we are going to have some guests on. I did this on Twitter. Let me make the pitch, Chris, on the show that,
Sure.
We are looking for people, knowledgeable people who would like to kind of, come on as a guest. Obviously this is DFS oriented, but if you wanted to come on and just maybe break down a couple of fights, you could do that. Would love to get some female participation. I think that would be awesome. I've already had like 3 or 4 people reach out to me on Twitter who would be interested in coming on as guests. None of them were females, unfortunately. If you'd like to come on as a guest, like, I don't know, man, we got to get Nan on. If Nan would be willing to come on, I think that would be pretty cool. Nan's a long-time follower of the show. So maybe we can get Nan to come on sometime. And if not talk about MMA, he could kind of like give us his theory on peace in the Middle East or something. But in any case, so that's it. At Sun Tzu. Great pod, guys. Peace.
All right. And so that'll do it for us. We will see you at the next pay-per-view. And good luck tomorrow morning, everybody.